Tonight on EWTN Live, we'll talk with a journalist from London about what it means to be historically Catholic and the importance of protecting our religious heritage and freedom. So please stay with us. Thank you very much and welcome. I'm Father Mitch Pacwa and welcome to EWTN Live, our chance to bring you guests from all over the world. And our guest tonight is well known to our EWTN family through her popular TV series, Feasts and Seasons, where she explains Catholic traditions in and around the home. She's also a journalist and an EWTN blogger with a focus on the Catholic Church in the United Kingdom. So please welcome Joanna Bogle. Joanna, welcome.
It's great to be back.
You're working on a new part of your series, Feasts and Seasons.
Yes, and loving it. This is a brand new one which won't be aired for quite a while yet. But as well as doing seasons through the year, I thought we could do something about the calendar of our lives. So we're going to go from baptism through the great sacramental journey of our lives, including ideas for celebrating things like confirmation and wedding and so on.
I see.
Of course, the sacraments are much more than a journey through our lives, but it's a nice pattern to follow. So there's fun things to do, recipes and craft work for how to mark these grand events at home.
Yeah. No, that's, and I take it that you have some new recipes to celebrate these different feasts?
All sorts of very good things, and part of the fun is doing the research, which I do obviously at home, and then I'm emailing back and forth with other people from EWTN. It's a great learning curve. Some of it's things that I've done in my life and enjoyed or picked up from other countries, and some of it is serious research on the internet. I just love doing it, and some of it's very simple stuff that families think, well, we do that anyway, but here's a way of doing it. Here's the concrete example of how you cook this or make this object or whatever it is.
Sure.
It's great fun, actually.
Oh, good. Excellent. And, you know, one of the things I always enjoy when you come here is giving us a little bit more background on how things are going in the church in Great Britain. You know, we have some sense, but you being a journalist, you know, you certainly have a lot more insight into it. What are some of the main religious events going on in Great Britain now?
Well, there are several things, some good and some bad. The major event, the major thing that is going to dominate our lives this year, and it's already begun, is the government's wretched plan to redefine marriage. David Cameron, the Prime Minister, is a conservative. There was no mention in the Conservative manifesto of any suggestion of saying that you can reinvent marriage, but they've announced that they're going to change the law so that two men can announce that they're married, two women. They're going to force people to accept this because they think this is necessary. I think it's absolute rubbish. It's scary. It is something that is supported by the Liberal Democrats, and the Conservative government is in coalition with the Lib Dems to make a substantial majority. They wouldn't have a majority without it. And it's supported by members of the Labour Party. It's frightening. It's very, very difficult because churches might, given the mood in the European Court of Human Rights and all this kind of rubbish, might be put under pressure to perform such ceremonies. There's no question that we can, of course.
Right.
Even if we were given a legal exemption, it may not carry weight internationally. Of course, it's out of the question. No Catholic priest could ever do this. But there is a concern. It could affect our Catholic schools. Will I have the freedom to go, as I sometimes do as a Catholic journalist, into a Catholic school and talk about marriage? There's no way I'm going to say two men can get married. I mean, of course not. But will I have the freedom to say that it's stupid, it's wrong? Will I have the freedom to quote the Catechism on this and related subjects? That's the major issue confronting us. But there's a lot of good news within the church. I mean, a lot of very good news.
Yeah, in terms of this issue, it's obviously also on the radar here in the United States. Some states have approved it, rarely by voting, mostly by either the judiciary or the legislature, but not by popular vote. Most of the time, by popular vote, it's voted down. But the margin keeps getting narrower. And I think one of the issues is that in general, marriage is not considered as high a value as it once was. Not just among people with same-sex attraction, but in general.
That's true. The campaign against the government's revolting ideas, sorry, but they are revolting, has been led by an excellent coalition. My husband has been particularly involved in this. He's been chairman of the Catholic Union. Really good teamwork with evangelicals and so on. And the evangelicals, along with people of no particular faith, but just concerned about human flourishing, formed a group called the Campaign for Marriage. And although they've done very well, they've got over 600,000 signatures, they're edging up, towards the million mark and all that. It is true that our marriage rate is so low, and so many families have a daughter or a son living casually with somebody without marriage, that there isn't that driving conviction, but of course marriage is important, that there would have been a decade ago. Right. You're right, that makes it hard, because we want to campaign for marriage. We see this redefinition of marriage as destructive of marriage. That is really the issue. And of course, it's also, and the collapse of marriage generally is contributing to this, going to cause enormous legal muddles. How do you define somebody as being a grandchild if it is not actually the physical grandchild, but is the child of some same-sex union of two men? But of course, such a child does indeed have a mother somewhere who was paid to carry the child to term. There are going to be all sorts of legal cases. And because we don't honour marriage, we've lost that understanding that marriage is the structure of our lives, legally, culturally. We've lost that common sense view.
One of the problems that certainly is inherent in these same-sex unions is that many of them do want to have children, but in order to have children, they must go outside that relationship. Even if they were to define this as marriage, to have a child, they would have to commit adultery.
That's true. And then there's a nonsense. We all have a right to know who we are, really who we are. And for a long while, this has been recognized by people who are, in a perfectly good and beautiful way, adopted. You have a right to know who your natural mother is. This has been conceded in law. And there are all sorts of obvious reasons for that, in order that you might not, for example, accidentally marry your sibling or something like that. So we all know that. But if that is true in the old-fashioned way, an adopted child with a right to know, well, it's much more true of a child of two men who knows that he or she, obviously cannot be the product of this union. So there's going to be a lie, a profound untruth written into our law, and even on your birth certificate it will say something profoundly untrue, that you are a child of some union that cannot produce a child. So there's a nonsense about all of this. And what does annoy me is we're not even allowed to discuss this properly, because you're called homophobic and bigoted merely for saying, well, look, this is nonsense. My only hope is that because the law is stupid, and we've often lived with stupid and cruel and wicked laws before, in the very long term, and a Christian must take the longer view, we can thwart this, because it's culture that changes things in the long term. Right. I think there's probably still a law, I may be wrong about this, but I think there's still a law on the statute book somewhere saying you may not eat mince pies, because Oliver Cromwell passed this idiotic law. I'm not sure they ever repealed that particular law, but Christmas was reintroduced after the interregnum, when he was running our country, after they chopped off the king's head. And when the king was returned, Christmas returned, everything returned. It was great. But it may be the idiot law lingered. What changed? The culture, and who won, and the dominant view, and so on. So perhaps in 100 years somebody will say, there's a stupid law that says two blokes can get married, because by then we've changed the culture. But I still find the whole thing sickening and sad.
Well, see, and here's one of the part of the rhetoric that we have to deal with. On one hand, our politicians in this country are saying, well, who are we to say whom you cannot love? And they pose it in that way. And of course, one of the things that we need to have a sense of course, we want people to love each other.
Of course.
You know, this is something that we want to promote, and that's not stupid. That's not ridiculous. Yeah. You know, for everybody to know that they are cared for, cherished, and loved is very important. And so we don't want to denigrate that at all. But to call it marriage, this is the impossibility, of it. It's not, friendship is something that's much cherished, but that's not.
I think that's absolutely right. And like a lot of other things, Something Wrong Today was born in the injustices and sneering and cruelty of the past. And we can see that. Where people felt excluded from society or were unjustly treated or hounded, and there were ghastly experiences of this. And this applies also to people of homosexual inclination and so on.
Sure.
The sneering and the teasing, that's so horrible. And it's true that the sins of one generation then rebound onto the next. And you can see this in a great many ways. I mean, in the most extreme, you could see how the cruelties and injustice led to Marxism at the end of the 19th century, led to the Marxism of the 20th, with what untold misery. Yes, it behoves us all. Next time we're smug and clever about something, we may be building up misery for the future by our cruel or exclusive treatment of somebody. And you notice that. You see it in the church, where you are much too strict or something. We saw in the recent past, for example, on ecumenism, because there was an exaggerated idea of, oh, you mustn't, talk to Methodists or sing a hymn with them. Inevitably, there was a swing against that in the church, where everyone said, oh, come on. And then there became a blurring even about religious truth. That's a bad example, but it's what I'm trying to say. Where you make too harsh a judgment in one direction, there are bound to be problems. Yes, that's true. But I think we also want to talk about love. I mean, some of the most deep and beautiful of human loves are not connected with marriage. I can't marry my mother, but I love her dearly. Right. I have two good friends who are sisters who both share a house with the daughter of one of the sisters. And I would say they're most affectionate, the three of them. I mean, this little girl grew up with her mum. Sadly, the dad left. And with her auntie, I mean, lots of love and affection. They don't want to get married.
No,
of course not.
And one of the difficulties too, and this is where we have to be careful about the way the rhetoric goes on either side of this issue, because now there are people who are promoting same-sex marriage that denigrate people who are in favor of heterosexual marriage and call them mere breeders, which is not what marriage is. Yeah. Marriage isn't you breed chicks in a barn. You raise children.
Of course.
And this is a very different situation. And so there's an antagonism toward those who do promote marriage.
That's true.
Between a man and a woman. This is a tension that's rising here. And, one of the things that we Christians have to do is help call people to a balanced discussion of it, and deal with the truth of marriage, but at the same time, make sure that on the other side, we call them away from, denigrating those who are heterosexual and are promoting marriage between man and a woman.
I think one of the things we have to do, which is increasingly difficult, is to remember that the rule of courtesy and love and goodwill is primary for Christians. And we win more people this way, more hearts, more minds. Right. And there's more peace of mind and heart for us too. Yes. And this is extremely important. I think it's very frustrating because we want to have a large and generous discussion, and we are open to a recognition that the church is own way of putting things may have been harsh in the past and so on. Of course, John Paul led the way in this. I loved the way he said, sorry, he who often had no need to, said it, and it opened hearts, and this is crucial, I think. And we also need to make it clear that we may find a new law absolutely ghastly, but it doesn't necessarily mean we think all the people promoting it are. It's just a stupid and dreadful idea. But I'm very well aware that a lot of people who promote it have got, in a terribly muddled way, very generous instincts there. And that's part of what is so frustrating. This generosity, this desire to help the wounded and all that, you know, could be put to better use. I just find it very, very sad. It's very frustrating in Britain because this was not debated before the election. And it's a clumsy instrument, having a parliamentary democracy, but it sort of works. It means you can have a debate and vote for people on the basis of what they're going to do. And we didn't. We were not told this is what the government wanted to do. And it's not a trivial issue.
Right.
I mean, it's not like raising the price of cabbage, is it? So we feel that we were not given the debate that our whole great parliamentary tradition has enabled us to have. And we've been blocked. And I find this there's an anger and a hurt there. So it could be whistled through in this parliament, you see, because of this coalition. And then it's a fait accompli, and the next election is not for 2 or 3 years, and we can't then make it an election issue because it's going to be difficult to unscramble the law.
Right. No, these are very complex issues. And, you know, one of the points that we need to make is the promotion of the family to begin with.
Yes, that's certainly true.
This, you know, it's not just that we want to be against same-sex marriage, but we want to be for the family.
Well, in Britain, this is a matter actually of survival because our birth rate is so low and so on. We are storing up a great many huge problems for the future. And not just the future, it's already very clear, partly because of longevity, we're all living longer and so on, that we're running out of money to pay people's pensions. And family breakup has all sorts of other complexities.
Absolutely.
I mean, obviously, you know the old expression, haven't you got homes to go to? Well, if you say that to some young people on a summer's night who are all vomiting and hitting one another in the local shopping centre, the honest answer is perhaps no, not really homes, not a cosy place where you really belong with mum and dad and a kitchen table with a pot of tea going the rounds. Not really a home. A place, yes, mum and her new boyfriend, and then dad and his new wife, and your nan and her new boyfriend. Sort of. These are all places where, you know, you could be, but there isn't really a home. And with that, no nation. It's just really sad. I think in Britain, that's why we idealised the royal wedding a while back, last year, with year before, with Prince William, Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. We so much want a role model that is a happy family, and it's a bit sad to try to build up a public role model instead of getting on with our own ordinary role models. It's just rather sad. It's trying to create a soap opera that we can believe in. It's horrid and sad. And although I'm very glad there was a royal wedding, and even gladder there's a royal baby, it's all very good in lots of ways, but there's something not real about the way people talk about it. It's not healthy. It's not a wholesome joy reflecting a commonly shared values. It's a desire to follow a royal soap opera because there's a recognition that everything's gone wrong. That's escapism. It's not real.
Yes.
I find that all wrong.
Yeah, and this, you know, certainly it seems that in many of our societies, the breakdown of the family is a major cause of poverty, especially for women and children.
Yes, that's
you know, they certainly suffer, and you know, a wide variety of other ills. So it's not just that we want, you know, a nice image, but it's rather there's a reality to the integral family that is very much missing today.
Well, one of the things you realize as you get middle-aged, as I am, is the sheer practical and economic realities of it. The way our family functions, and we're that boring thing, a reasonably sort of functioning family, just a lot of tiresome, annoying people. We all bicker and fight, we all love one another, it functions pretty well. We tend to stick at marriage for life, the whole deal. So my elderly mother is part of a whole family network. I mean, of course. There's no question. She's all still part of a structure, even though she's widowed and now in her 90s. And my in-laws in the same way, my mother-in-law. So we're all functioning. The network functions economically, socially. The needs are met, the emotional needs, the financial needs. We all love each other. It all works. So as the next generation comes along, my mother's a great-grandmother, you can see the new baby is folded into this large, cozy, messy, not always perfect, but functioning system based on marriage, based on an absolutely clear structure. And we're normal. We know we're the original plan. And we know even with the original plan, of course it's not perfect. I mean, it just annoys me when campaigners say, oh, but it's all about two people who love one another. Well, it's not really. It's about a whole structure. Marriage is about the formation of an entire structure on which any sane society rests, which takes care of the elderly, care of the newborns, in which a tiresome Auntie Joanna who goes to America and goes on telly is all part of the structure.
See,
and without that, the nation's going to collapse. And you can sort of feel it's already very frayed around the edges.
Yeah, that's been the problem going on for the last 50 years in regard to the breakdown of family through divorce, followed by the lack of marriage within family, and now the redefinition of family. It's just been a progress, and we need families to stay intact in order to take care of all those generation levels.
And it's a decision. Love is a feeling, but it isn't really. It's a decision, and you keep making that decision day after day. Yes. Love isn't just a feeling. And do you remember there was that film, years ago now, it was when I was at school, in which it was rather sweet. It wasn't without value, but it was a slightly soppy film. And there was this slogan, love means never having to say you're sorry. Yes. And I remember my mother saying, what nonsense? Love is being able to say you're sorry. That's the point. Love is being able to say you're sorry. It was called Love Story. Love Story. I mean, it was sweet. It had something going for it. It was quite romantic, and let's denigrate that it was not the worst, but it was a stupid thing. Love means being able to say you're sorry. And that's why I think the church was also strong in being able to say sorry, because she knows about love, she knows about tough love, she knows about decisions. And she knows that you are respected more for not puffing yourself up, but for seeking the good, the true, the beautiful, which sometimes means saying sorry. So we've got a muddle about love as well as a muddle about marriage and much more. I am gloomy about Britain. In all honesty, I am gloomy. And the cliche in 2012, the cliche last year, particularly in the autumn, was, oh, it's been a great year, especially for us Londoners. Oh, it's been great because we had the Olympics and we had the Queen's Diamond Jubilee. Well, both of these were great. I mean, it was fun, lots of cheerful people enjoying life in a great city. The Jubilee in particular, I mean, I joined all the people cheering the Queen. It was grand. But in a way, there's an element of bread and circuses about this. It's good, but it's not the stuff of our national life anymore. It was just a large, good, jolly event. And it rained, and I mean, the British love standing in the rain with soggy sandwiches cheering the Queen, and it was great. But you can't build a nation on that if the rot has set in. You can't really. You think you can, but you can't.
It's sometimes, I wonder about the West becoming as tired and culturally depleted as the old Roman Empire in the 5th century. When you read some of the old Latin poems, it's doggerel. It's not very profound. It's not very good, and they memorize some old things, but the quality of plays went into the obscene because they ran out of good jokes. So they just became obscene, and and of course the games and circuses were a big deal, but there was a hollowness to the empire, and there may be a hollowness that, just as in that period, could only be revitalized by the faith.
And this I think we do see, and that is why both John Paul and Benedict have called us to this new evangelization. It's funny, when I first heard that phrase, I didn't really hear it. It was a sort of a nice noise that popes make, new evangelization and so on. And it's only quite recently it dawned on me, oh, they want us to have a new evangelization. I hadn't registered, and I've got quite interested in it. I'm studying at the Maryvale Institute in Birmingham, where one can do a degree and so on. I'm doing that. But I thought I'd enroll on a course on the new evangelization. And I've been extremely impressed. Most of the people on the course are much younger than me. And these are young people who are employed, for example, as school chaplains, as a lay school chaplain. But you need training for this. You can't be a chaplain in the real sense of the word. But you can, for example, lead the spiritual life of the school. I mean, thinking of things like leading prayers at morning assembly, arranging for the children to have weekly mass and confession and so on. So you're the liaison person. And also linking in with the religious education department and so on and so on. There's a great enthusiasm. And some of these people are connected with one or more of the new movements in the church. So they've had some revitalizing of their faith, and or they've been to World Youth Day, or they're part of this new trend with a lot of adoration of the Blessed Sacrament. They're catching the tail end of the sort of charismatic movement with a certain enthusiastic prayer. They're very involved with pro-life usually. And there's a whole, I thought, gosh, there really is a new evangelization. But it begins with quite profound study. I mean, we are doing on this evangelization course, we've been studying John Paul's Novo Millennio in Eunte and writing essays on it and really studying it and soaking in prayer and so on. This is not, hey, here's how you put leaflets through doors. It's not like that at all. It's very sort of deep stuff. And I think this is going to happen. But it's not happening, it's not going to happen in an easy way. It's much more like the end of the Roman Empire. It's much more like Augustine coming to England in 597. It's much more like this. And I think we can do something.
And just so folks
I don't think I'll live to see the fruits.
What you mean by that, St. Augustine, not of Hippo,
no.
but St. Augustine, the Benedictine monk,
yes,
that was sent by Pope Gregory
that's it.
to England.
In the year 597, we had the anniversary in 1997. Yes, he was sent, not the famous Augustinus Hippo, the one that we call Augustine of Canterbury, was sent to evangelize the new people in Britain, who were not the old British, but the people who'd invaded, the Angles and Saxons, hence giving us the name. Yes, and Danes, though they tended to come a bit later, but yes, hence the name Angleland or England. And yes, the Danes were seriously ferocious, continued for the next 500 years and more to harass our coasts. And you can tell from the names of our towns, which are the Viking ones and so on, and also some people's surnames and so on. They too were converted in their turn. And we have to think about this, wave after wave of people coming, wave after wave of conversion. But Augustine didn't have it easy. And you know what is interesting? I didn't realize this because I was just told he'd arrived, which I knew the story. And Ethelbert of Kent, the local Catholic church in Ramsgate is named St. Ethelbert's and so on. He was the king and he converted. But what I didn't know, wasn't taught at school, was that when Augustine and his monks originally set out, they got across Gaul, and then the French, as always being rude about us, said, oh, you don't want to go there, it pours with rain all the time, and the beer's horrible or whatever. But seriously, they said, well, no, they are ferocious, they are pagans. And they were right, they were pagans. And Augustine and his monks went back. They went back to Italy and said, we're not prepared to go, they're terrifying. And the Pope said something, I think, along the lines of, last time I looked, I'm Peter, you're a monk. Do as you're told. Right. Take your sandwiches and your spaghetti or whatever they gave them in Italy in those days, go to England. Take an umbrella, I don't care, learn how to play cricket. But you will evangelize them. And I'm joking, but that is what happened. They went back and they had to come again. So it's the story, be not afraid. They were afraid, but they obeyed. With what results? With what results? I mean, they converted us, and here you see a Christian. Yeah. So we have to do it again and again, but we might, like Augustine, need to be told, I'm sorry, you will do it. It's going to be tough, but you'll do it.
That's exactly what this last synod said. We're going to take a little bit of a break. We want to come back in a couple minutes and get your questions and your comments, so please stay with us. Thank you. Welcome back. Before we go to our questions, we want you to know that the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops announced today that during this year of faith and leading up to the 40th anniversary of Roe versus Wade, the U.S. Catholic bishops have called for a simple novena of 9 days of prayer, penance, and pilgrimage, beginning this Saturday, January 19th, until January 27th. And we encourage you to join in, praying for an end to abortion and a renewal for a culture of life. If you want to get more information about this novena, go to www.usccb.org/9days. usccb.org/9days. And 9 is just the number 9. So find out more about that. Also, we want to encourage you to come down here to visit us. If you can make a pilgrimage to Birmingham, I know there are a number of folks who are traveling in between the north and going down south to spend the winter. And if you'd like to stop here on your way, we'd more than love to have you. Be part of our masses, of course, be in our studio audience, and have tours of the network. You can contact our pilgrimage department by calling them at 205-271-2966. Or you can go to the website www.ewtn.com. So that's a good thing. All right, ready for some questions?
Yes, I think so.
All right, let's start off with the call. We have Karen from New York. Hello, Karen.
Hello,
Hi, where are you from in New York?
Syracuse.
Syracuse. And what's your question?
Well, I just left teaching 5 years ago. My grandchildren seem to think that being gay is the greatest thing on earth. Our schools up here talk about them like it's the greatest thing going, but they will not talk about marriage whatsoever. We do not have any morals and values in our schools anymore. When is the time going to come back that they start talking about marriage, our morals, our values, and quit saying that we're picking on these gay people?
All right.
When
Wanna
indeed,
respond?
this is not dissimilar to what's happening in Britain. I'm not sure I would put it as strongly as that. In fact, a lot of our school children use the word gay as an insult. Oh, he's so gay, meaning he's awful, you know.
Right.
So there's a sort of backlash in a rather ghastly way. When will it get better? When we re-evangelize. Of course we must stand up for our position wherever we are as a teacher or whatever, but I honestly think this is a problem of our entire culture, and it's not something we can just deal with in a hurry. This is a call to a revived evangelizing. I don't think there's a shortcut.
No. As a matter of fact, it's sometimes, and Karen brings up a point that in many government schools, it's, you get fired if you tell people that they need to wait until marriage in order to engage in relations. The assumption is that they can't wait, they won't wait, and so all we can do is tell them to be protected against disease and pregnancy. And in fact, the reality is that while 20% of the general population already has a sexually transmitted disease, among adolescents, it's now 25% are infected, and that the number of diseases went from 2 back before the 70s to now it's about 40. You know, so there's a wide diversity, and you know, this isn't explained. It's explained, well, if you do this, you'll be safe. And there is a direct proportion between this so-called education for safe sex and the increase of abortion and sexually transmitted diseases.
It's time for a major rethink.
And unmarried women having children.
It's time for a major rethink on the sex ed. That, I think, may come because a lot of teachers don't really like doing sex education anyway. It's embarrassing, it's awkward, there are all these issues. The children find it funny, they giggle, there's a lot of vulgarity. A lot of teachers would be glad to get rid of it. That is one we might win. But I think we have to change the general culture. Yeah. And I invite this nice young lady to hold on there. It's coming. Better things are coming. Just hang on in there. You're not alone. And there is a Christian culture waiting to be given, which is glorious and liberating. Meanwhile, hang on in there and stand up for your principles, and you might find that you've got more allies than you think.
One of the other things, too, is to help people learn to think about these issues rationally so that we're not moved by anger for, anger against the so-called breeders.
Yes, that's so true.
And we're not moved by anger against the pro-homosexual folks, that instead of anger, we need to use thought and that, the ethical thinking based in, certainly the logic of Aristotle and and more profoundly, the perfection of that in St. Thomas Aquinas. This ability to think through the issues, to talk about what is the purpose of human sexuality, marriage, and so on, to ask those questions when the culture doesn't know how.
Indeed.
This is one of our tasks as well. We have a question from our studio audience. Sir, where are you from?
I'm from near Chicago, west of Chicago. And this question is for Joanna. About 5 years ago, Pope Benedict visited the U.S., and at the time it had a very galvanizing effect on Catholics and non-Catholics alike. It was kind of short-lived, but you recently experienced the same thing in Britain. The Pope came to visit you. So I was wondering if you could share with us a little bit about what kind of effect his visit had on both Catholics and non-Catholics, the country as a whole.
Yes, this is really important. The visit was preceded by a barrage of massive anti-Pope Benedict propaganda. It was absolutely ghastly. I mean, we were told the most horrible things about this man. And dreadful, dreadful headlines attacking him, the whole thing, letters saying he shouldn't come, an attempt to prosecute him on arrival, ghastly, ghastly stuff. And then he arrived, he flew into Scotland because the time he came, that was going to be the best thing. The Queen was in Scotland and so on. Beautifully arranged. He walked down the steps of the aircraft and into our hearts. It was an absolute triumph. Within 24 hours, people who'd been attacking him were dropped from the TV programs. The newspapers changed their tune. It was the most extraordinary experience. He was a delight. He spoke beautifully, absolutely beautifully. And he was this very sweet man, a great scholar, but just a dear man, scooping up babies and kissing them on the top of the head and beaming. And he spoke magnificently, I mean, absolutely tour de force in Parliament. It was a magnificent dissertation on faith and reason and the finest defense of parliamentary democracy that I personally have ever heard, and I did hear it. I was privileged to be there. Then we had this fabulous young people's prayer vigil in Hyde Park. Marvellous. You could have heard a pin drop on the wet grass as 80,000 people, majority of them young, knelt down to pray. I'm gulping as I think of it because it's very rare that one participates in anything like that. And then there was the big climax, which was the beatification of John Henry Newman. And I wasn't the only one who went overnight in a coach, streaming up to the Midlands. And it was this amazing experience in this natural amphitheatre, Cofton Park, just outside Birmingham. There's a great sort of fold of the hills. It's just the most stunning place. And it happened to be the anniversary of the Battle of Britain, and he's a German Pope, and he spoke so powerfully about the Battle of Britain, very tenderly, very beautifully about this, the great, well, I suppose you could say sort of a healing after all those years. And then there was this beatification of our great Englishman, John Henry Newman, with all that means for Anglicans and Catholics. The visit was a triumph. The visit was a triumph. And then we had what our Scottish cardinal called a Benedict bounce. A lot of young people getting very excited, applications for the priesthood. I think we can do something with this. I think it has played a role in a renewed sense of confidence within the church. That won't necessarily translate into solving the problems in society, but in very general terms, it added to a general trend within the churches, certain new confidence, certain strength. Yes, there are some good things happening in the church, but pretty bad things happening outside.
We have another caller. Hello, Chrissy? Chrissy, are you there? We lost her?
No.
All right, so, well, anyway, there's Chrissy who had a question about how Catholic education in England would compare to what's going on in America.
Well, I don't really know about America. In Britain, I'm not quite sure of the statistic, but I think it's about 10% of children are educated in Catholic schools. That is to say, either in Catholic independent schools where you pay, or, much more usually, in schools which receive substantial government funding. In other words, the schools are free, paid for by public money, our money as well. And Catholic schools are very, very popular. They are, in general, in very general terms, regarded as much better than most schools. And they often look better. I mean, the children wear a nice uniform and they have a sense of community zeal to them. They're often located near a church, perhaps a slightly villagey quality of life, you know,
Sure.
church and school. And parents do anything to get their children into schools, and every parish priest knows this because he knows about the family that turn up, not having been to Mass with a child of rising 4. Oh, we want to have the child baptized. Of course, this has nothing to do with getting the child into the local Catholic school. No, but it has. So, yeah, in general, there's a bit of a success story. It's not quite as good as that. As I've hinted, a lot of the children go to school, but they don't go to Mass on Sundays. And you quite often get, this is a new trend, children getting quite interested in their faith at school, and then the parents getting angry. Why do you expect us to take him to Mass on Sundays? Because some teacher has enthused them. So there's a lot of muddles there. There are also, however, Catholic schools where the faith is, of course, not taught well, taught very badly. That is very true at secondary level. It's very difficult to recruit good teachers. We have not been educating very well over the last 40 years. And we are now realizing that it's tough in trying to recruit a good Catholic headmaster. Where do you get them from? Where are the good families, the good Catholic homes? Where are the products of our Catholic schools that really live their faith? So we've got problems. I've been involved with a number of projects in Catholic primary schools, and I've been very impressed. I mean, in modern Britain, you go into a Catholic primary school and it's a delight. I mean, it's the crucifix, statue of Our Lady, picture of the Pope, children will chorus a prayer. They throw up the words of a hymn on the whiteboard, you know. I mean, it's great. You think, gosh, it's civilization. But it's not as tidy as that. And we do have Catholic schools, and I'm thinking here perhaps a bit more at the secondary level, where there are teachers who are living in sin with a boyfriend, you know, who openly say they don't go to Mass. But we equally have some which are very good. I went back to my old school the other day, and I was really impressed. The headmistress, who sort of half my age, you know, a very, very nice woman and a tough cookie. And a number of girls go to Mass before school. You know, it's optional, but they have to get there at 8 o'clock. There are some good things happening. But I don't want to exaggerate it. We need to improve our Catholic schools. We have had some bad times. There is a new trend, and it's good. On the whole, Catholic schools are places of light, and we must fight to defend them. But a lot of priests would not agree with me. Their local school is no good, and they'd say, better the kids go to a non-Catholic school where they have to fight for their faith. So we must look at that side of the argument too. I'm giving an overall picture, and I'm only one woman. And I am worried. I'm worried about government pressure on the schools. If the government uses public money to pay for schools, they might announce that the schools must follow public policy, for example, on marriage, back to our earlier subject.
Right.
That is a worry. And not all the head teachers, not all the governing committees of schools will back the church. They certainly won't. And I know they won't, and you know what the situation can be.
Right.
And I know some distraught parish priests who say, honestly, that the school locally is hopeless, particularly secondary school. the teachers don't support the faith, the children don't practice, I'm not welcome there. I am more comfortable with saying to devout families, look, send your children to this or that other local school where they'll have to fight for their faith, but they will be respected as a minority, and we can work with that.
Yeah. All right. We have Joan. Hello, Joan.
Yes,
Hi, where are you from?
New York.
And what's your question?
Well, first I'd like to say that I enjoy your programs, and I enjoy Mrs. Bogle's programs. I watched her Feasts and Seasons, and I also enjoyed the program she did with her husband, which was a historical program. But my question was, I had read that a number of Protestant congregations with their minister had converted to Catholicism with the approval of Rome, and that there were some convents where the Mother Superior and all the nuns in the convent also converted to Catholicism and remained as a congregation with the approval of Rome. Now, is that accurate, and to what extent is that going on?
Oh, thank you, Joan. That's a good question.
Yes, the answer is yes, but it wouldn't
To
be
all of those?
to all of those, but it's not quite as tidy as that. The Holy Father magnificently issued to the Church of England, specifically to Anglicans, and it's not really quite right to say just Protestants, because they don't regard themselves as Protestants in quite that sense.
Yes.
They would regard themselves as Anglicans. And it's no use saying, oh, there's no difference. There is a difference if you're an Anglican. Your whole heritage is not, at this stage in history, Protestant in the sense of the word. They would regard themselves, many of them, as having some sort of more Catholic link, at any rate, Anglican. Otherwise, it's like saying I'm Scottish. I'm not, I'm English. I mean, there is a difference. That's a silly analogy, but it's a little bit of a link. So the Holy Father sent out a message, Anglicanorum Cetibus, two groups of Anglicans. Groups, Cetibus, two groups of Anglicans. Come to Rome. Come into full communion with the Catholic Church. Bring with you your Anglican traditions. And he didn't specify this, but one might say Anglican heritage, traditions, hymns, ways of doing things, some of the liturgical traditions, literally the language and so on that is used, the Anglican heritage of things like evensong, their form of evening prayer. The Anglican patrimony was the word he used. There's a whole package deal of, how you live, how you worship, and so on.
And a certain cadence of the language.
Yes, some of it very beautiful.
Yes,
some of it
very
very
much
beautiful.
So. Very much so.
And there is also a certain tradition of the way you do various parish events, which you can see I'm smiling as I talk about it. Some of it's become part of our national way of looking at ourselves, also in amusing ways and so on. And yes, a number responded. Now, they were not able to bring their buildings with them, and that is the great tragedy. There are these gracious, magnificent, medieval, Victorian, whatever they are, buildings, and only a very small number, statistically speaking, of Anglican clergy responded, but they did respond, and we now have some 80 ordinariate groups. They were given the title of being the Anglican Ordinariate. They have their own ordinary, as every diocese does, so it's effectively like a diocese, but it's all over Britain. Where are they worshipping? Well, first they had to come into the church, so each group with their minister came, and the minister would be given a period of study and discernment, and then was ordained as a Catholic priest. They've all been received into the Catholic Church, confirmed. Where are they worshipping? Well, mostly in Catholic churches, but just these last few weeks, they've been given 2 churches in London, Catholic churches, which for various reasons came free. And they will now have a major church, which is in Warwick Street. It was a church that had some controversy associated with it. There was a stupid lobby group there. We're having gay masses, so we're well rid of that. It was an opportunity for the Archbishop of Westminster to say, stop all that. It will be used as the Ordinariate. And the church I now go to, which is Precious Blood Church at London Bridge on the south bank of the Thames, the Ordinariate is being given the use of that church. So yes, I now go to Evensong. They're in full communion with Rome. Actually, I mostly go to my own local parish too, but I can go to the Ordinariate if I want, and I have friends there, so I do. And it's very, very beautiful. And yes, just recently a group of Anglican nuns, not a large group, about a dozen of them, but they decided to join the Ordinariate. They are currently staying with the good sisters on the Isle of Wight at Ryde, while looking for a convent of their own. They've all been received into the church, and there will be more. this is a massive thing. This is the beginning of the healing of the division that began 400 years ago. So yeah, this is a very big thing and it's very joyful. But we need prayer because there are tough times ahead. There are going to be a lot of tensions about this. Some Anglicans are not happy, you know, oh, I don't ever want to become a Roman Catholic. Well, the Pope isn't forcing you, it was just an invitation. But there are some good things. It's a sign of great light and joy.
Let's take another call. We have Evelina. Hello, Evelina.
Hi, Father Mitch and Mrs. Bogle.
Hi, where are you from?
Tawnytown, Maryland.
And what's your question?
First, I wanted to say that I really admire both of you and Mrs. Bogle. I've written you a couple times. You probably remember Evelina Balestri, sort of champion's brag.
Yes, I know.
Yes, it was nice to finally get on the phone with you. And I wanted to ask, what do you think will happen with, if, I'm not exactly sure, have the laws gone through allowing gay marriage now, or are they about to go through in Britain?
No, they have not gone through. It's simply a proposal at this stage. First, Evelina, I must say it's lovely to talk to you. We've corresponded by email. She's a delight, a lovely bright email and lovely bright voice. So it's lovely to talk to you, Evelina. No, the law has not gone through. It hasn't even so far been presented to Parliament. It's been announced by the Prime Minister, and later this month, January, it will be, as I understand it, presented to Parliament. It has to go through the House of Commons. It also has to go through the House of Lords. And the House of Lords, even in its emasculated state, will, I think, reject it and call for some amendments. So we have a lot still to play for. I think it might pass through the Commons, but it rather depends on some of the detail of the law. There are a great many members of Parliament who are worried about many aspects, not least religious freedom, and there are others who are coming under increasing pressure from their constituents. There is a massive campaign going on. I liked it in France, where 1 million Frenchmen took to the streets last weekend. Vive la France! I think they set us as a good example. I'm not sure we could do that, but we are fighting. It's not over yet. It's not over yet.
Yes. Does the Queen weigh in on into this issue of the Anglicans who support the gay? Because she's the titular head of the church.
She's the titular head of the Church of England, but she will never, ever make her views known on anything like this.
Okay.
The most the Queen ever does, and we honour her for it, is she makes it very clear in her Christmas broadcast every year that she has a deep personal faith. And this last Christmas, it was almost more explicit than ever. I'm guessing that she's probably less than happy at what's going on. There is no way she will ever reveal her views. And writing to the Queen and everything doesn't really work. We are a parliamentary democracy, so we do it through Parliament. The Queen reigns but does not rule. And the issue here is to do it through Parliament. I think we have still got quite a lot to play for. But unfortunately, we have many things stacked against us. And the most distressing of these is that David Cameron has made it clear he doesn't really care what is said. He intends to try to push this law through. This is very distressing.
It sounds that there is, clearly some sort of other agenda that, that has a lot to do with politics in some way, and that's certainly at stake here as well. So again, our task seems to be that we must promote marriage and in its full integrity, and help call people to be faithful to a spouse and to the children that they bring into the world.
We must, and we must do this with a great confidence. I'm sorry if Avelina's gone off the air, has she?
Yes, she has. We're about out of time.
Next one. Well, we fight on, and I am not optimistic in the short term about all of these issues, but I don't think God lets us down. And when I was much younger, I listened to the television with this astonishing news that we had a Polish Pope, and his message to us was, do not be afraid. And I mean, we've got to stick with that. We are gloriously led, we are Catholics, we're not going to be afraid.
Yep. Well, thank you very much for being with us and for doing this continuation of your series. We appreciate that. And may the Lord bless all of you and cause his face to shine upon you and lead you by his peace. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. And you know, we can bring you this program and Joanna's series and all the other programs that we do here at EWTN because you bring this network to you. We don't have commercials, but we do need your support. So please keep us in between your gas bill, your electric bill, and your cable bill, and we'll be able to pay all of our bills too. Thank you.